as part of this bootcamp. So basically, I'm sure you probably know who I am, but if you do, my name is Oladele Soares, and been within the cloud security space for about a couple of years now. I'm just going to put my screen, my face, where you can see that I'm just gonna. So been around for about a couple of years now. Within the Microsoft Cloud Security stack for about a couple of years now. Before then, I used to work as security support engineer, then moved down to cloud security manager, and then focus with Microsoft stack, everything M365 application, and some element in Azure as well. I've also had the opportunity to pick up all the product as well, but I mean, just to focus on what we're here today. So that's just a brief introduction about me. One of the things I like to do whenever I'm taking a session is to ensure that we are engaging. So it's going to be more of us trying to delve in real life scenarios and whatnot. I have some I would say some assumption here that first and foremost we've been part of subsequent classes, and second, we are not new to the topic Entra. So if you're new to that, you can, let me know so that I can, probably adjust my style of delivery or something. But today we're going to be looking at a completely different topic outside of, I mean, it's within identity technically, but it's more focused around the application side of things, and then we delve into some key areas. So I've pasted the key expectation of this call into the chat. Let me know if you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, you can you give a thumbs up? If you can't,
yeah, I can see your screen.
You give a thumbs down. Good. So that being said, for some of us, okay, that's good. Just gonna see if my laptop is charging so that it doesn't go off on us. Okay, I'm glad you can see my screen. So today, in the chat, can you also confirm in the chat that you can see the objective that I've added, and then if you cannot, let me know as well. If you can just give a thumbs up in the chat, say, oh, by the way, I can see what you've added, blah, 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 blah. So that I'm sure everyone there's visibility across board. Okay, that's good. I want us to quickly do a brief looking at what we have on the screen in terms of the delivery. So we are looking at first, we are discovering application is a defender for cloud, or maybe ADFS, depending on what we have in terms of architecture. Then we are going to be implementing some access management for application. We're also going to be designing and implementing our application. Most likely, we probably will try to bring in some application if you can. But I want us to cycle back to why the conversation enterprise app came in. So previously, let me go into Entra. Previously, we used to have organization with the on-premise infrastructure, everything being fully on-prem, which means that people would obviously manage their application, ensure that people have like VPN to be able to tunnel down on premises to be able to access such application. They will also need to be added to the application. The application is going to be sitting on a particular server. You must be assigned this application before you can access it. If the application needs to be accessed externally, then we have to then put that on the public facing application server, and then people are able to browse to the URL and all this nice stuff. So we are not seeing anything different from what we are seeing at the moment or what we've seen in the past. An application is a simple thing as us browsing to google.com because it sits on one web server somewhere. I'll be able to access it. So, and as we all know, so for some of us that have got development background in here, we have different kind of application. You have the mobile application, you have the single page application, you have applications that are very robust in terms of the based on the the language that is being built on and the operating system and those nice stuff. Fantastic thing. So why are we talking about enterprise app now? Now with the modernization of cloud, um, everything is now becoming SaaS, which is software as a service, which means that we don't necessarily have to host some of this application on premises and then have to then tunnel into it through a secure channel or VPN or whatever. We can as well just expose this application by wrapping it up and then deploying the 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 lightweight or the light version of it through different products that then allows us to authenticate and authorize our access to the application in a secure manner. And that's the birth of the enterprise application. So enterprise application basically is just a simple, it's just like a lightweight. Of course, you still have to hold the application sitting somewhere, but a way to then create like a lightweight opportunity for you to be able to authenticate and authorize through the modern authentication method rather than the legacy one that we used to have and all of this nice stuff. So the whole idea is to help us to, you know, allow people to access from anywhere. One, secondly, ensure that it supports modern authentication, whether it is SAML, whether it is Auth, whether it is OpenID Connect, supporting those level of authentication, and then be able to, deploy to users rather than having to go through the old method of implementation. Does that make sense to you guys? Just in a rough show. I've not really delved into technical conversation, but does that make sense to you? We would delve in. I just need people to just give me thumbs up and thumbs down if you don't understand. Good. Now that we now understand some of these key things. Now within Entra, we have so if you go by the expectation of our first objective, you realize that if we are, I don't know, some of us that we start working, maybe we're working in an organization that has like a multiple set of application, and then you realize that you are able to authenticate with your username and password without you are able to authenticate with one single username and without having to change the password. And then you realize that you are able to go to even third-party applications that things like Workday or HR platform, but you realize that you're not changing your password, you just put in your email address and then you put the same password and it redirects through that Microsoft MFA screen, and then you're able to access the application. Now, what's happening in that experience is a single sign-on experience that is federated through the Microsoft Entra identity provider, which is the IDP. But then behind the scene, something happens. Now, within Entra, just before we start delving in, we need to first understand where this capability sits. So within Entra, if we go down to app registration and enterprise app, and I'll explain these two things to us. Now, think about two scenarios. Your organization has an inbuilt application that they own by themselves, and it's sitting in your environment. For you to stand up that instance in your environment, you need to register the application as the application owner. So if I click on app registration, you will see that it's going to give you like some basic information about stuffs within app registration. Maybe let's just search what that is, to be fair. Can you see my screen, by the way? Can you see my screen, by the way? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Good.
Yes.
So I'm trying to explain two things to us. If we've not done anything, I just wanted to understand two things here. Because it took me a while to understand the differences between enterprise apps and app registration. They are similar things, but two different things, doing two different scenarios. Even if that's the only thing you pick up this call, um, take it and own it with you. And by the way, I like to encourage people to listen. If you listen, I'm going to ask some questions. If you get the question, I might be nice enough to give you a gift or something. But what's going on with this? My computer is ridiculously slow. I'm sorry, guys. Apologies. It's just ridiculously slow. Sorry. I should have done this. Oh, come on. I don't know what's going on, guys. Do I have a lot of stuffs open? It's not looking good. Okay, now maybe I might just jump in a different computer then. Okay, maybe map this one. Just bear me 1 minute. Let me see if I can come off and come on again. Oh, okay. Let's see if I can move elsewhere. This is not good. This is not good. Sorry. Let's see what we need to do. Okay, maybe. Just gonna try to turn off and turn on again. Guys, just bear with me. Let me restart my laptop. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm back now. So sorry. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yes, so sorry.
We can.
Yes, so sorry about that. Just like that happens sometimes that we can't control. Apologies. Um, so like I was saying to us, a so two things are really important here. To first understand the differences between what an enterprise app registration is, and then what is enterprise application. So you need to understand those differences. So from what Google says here, let's see, let me maybe enter. Yeah, so app registration Entra creates a digital identity for an application, allowing you to authenticate users and request permission to access resources like Microsoft Graph, Team, SharePoint, and a unique profile that identifies connection to Entra identity. Basically, what that means is, what this is telling us is that this allows us to create application, which allows us to set permission to what it can access, allows us to assign it to specific users, allows us to probably carry out grant permission and all of this nice stuff. Now, when it comes to enterprise app, it's slightly different. And the difference is that for enterprise application, this allows you to then access other application that could be either owned by you or owned by an external organization that has built that application, that then allows you to then, you know, do the same authentication authorization requirement. At the end of the day, within enterprise application, you can still manage the application you've registered. So what that means is that if you are the owner of the application and then you want to then grant specific permission, you are better off registering this application in your environment and then assigning specific permission. If you want to consume other applications from external sources, you are better off then going into the enterprise application gallery, search for the application, and then grant it with permission that you need. But at the end of the day, what really drives these two environments is this bit here. So it's the enterprise application. Now, why am I even saying all of these things? Now, the reason why I'm saying all of these things is because when you within an environment, you want to ensure that you have appropriate security measure. Please, can you mute yourself so I don't listen to I hate my voice, if that's okay. So you have to ensure that you leverage appropriate security measure, because at the end of the day, once you start building multiple applications in your environment, you are doing stuff, you are potentially creating what we call a shadow IT environment, whereby you would have multiple applications sitting this in different areas with multiple permission without understanding why this application was built in the first place, who's got access to it, what permission is assigned to the application, and all those bits. And it's very, very important for us within security to be able to identify those use cases, because that allows us to start thinking about how can we fully protect this application. And that's what brings me to the discovery of those applications using what we call Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Now, the whole idea here is that the world is shifting from a traditional on-premises infrastructure where you then bring in application catalogs, do all this nice stuff. Now it's not fully in the cloud. So that means that first and foremost, your visibility is reduced. Second of all, um, you can't really see the traffic because nothing is going through your firewall anymore. So now the focus is now how to fully secure those applications that are externally exposed through the enterprise app. And the tool that does that with the Microsoft is the Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, because and the Microsoft Defender for Cloud App can either be called a CASB, that is the Cloud Access Security Broker, is a CASB. What that does is that because the application is not sitting within your environment, you want to then monitor more like the traffic because it is a SaaS-based application. And in that place, this is where you would find the functionality sits within Defender. Now, if you look at the initial stuff I shared with you as the objective for today, we have to discover our application using Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. And for us to discover the application, for every application that a user has used on a managed device that you own, and Microsoft is able to ingest the network traffic and then it sends those telemetry into Defender. Defender then analyzes the what we call the application catalog technically. And then it kind of gives you an overview of the application that cloud application that is consuming in your organization. So the very first thing, basically, if you're trying to do like a discovery of the application your users are using, you want to come down to what we call the cloud discovery. Now, within the cloud discovery, what we are looking at is that in our environment, this is going to give us like a dashboard um, of all of the cloud apps that we are currently consuming. So we can see a lot of things around, around the application, the sources, the categorization, and all those nice stuff. And then one of the first thing that comes to mind, look at as dashboard, you can see things around first and foremost the application category. So every application has different category. You can even subcategorize it um, based on specific terms, what we call sanctioned and unsanctioned. And you can even tag your application so that you can know which one is bad, which one is good. Because at the end of the day, you can only manage permissions that your application requests for. Any external application can be either be over permissive, which means that it's asking for too much permissions. And if you look at and with the way security is going now, there is a major concern when it comes to API related security because API is probably application program interface. There's no user authentication technically. So the driving factor for that is the API that you've exposed. And because Microsoft APIs are once you grant the consent, which I'm going to show you shortly, that means that you've given the application so much power to do whatever it wants to do. So you want to understand, look, this application has got this permission. Does it really need it? Does it need it? What does it really need? And we'll go into that context in a short period of time. But just before I push further, do we understand what we are discussing here from a high level? If you don't, give a thumbs down. If you do, give a thumbs up.
I honestly don't understand. I don't know if you can explain.
Okay. What don't you understand?
Like, just your thing is just, I don't know. Oh,
Have you been to previous classes?
yes,
Okay. Do you know what an application is, right?
yes,
Good. You know when you log in, when you want to browse, for example, you want to sign into your email address, you go to google.com, you put in your email address and password, right?
yes.
Where do you work currently? Do you work in an enterprise environment? Where do you work currently?
No, I'm not working in enterprise at the moment.
Okay. To explain it. So have you had the need to fill in a form online where they will ask you to create an account?
Yes,
Yeah, when you create an account, when you create an account as an application and it's managed by somebody, right?
okay,
Now,
yeah,
I want you to think about it in a method of, okay, look, um, you work in an environment and that application where you are creating an account is being given to your department to do stuff on. So you from a security or from an infrastructure environment, you manage how that authentication bit goes for the end user, which is yourself. Now, what we are now talking about here is the management of the application because we don't necessarily have to allow all application come into our environment. We have to manage this application because sometimes we might be the one that built it. It might be the one that you've consumed externally. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to manage it. Managing the application then comes to what we are talking about, that discovery phase, because we can discover this. So think about this because think about the application you're logging into to fill a form as an application that's been given to you at work to do whatever you need to do. But put yourself in a position of an IT person or a security person,
Okay.
and then think about how you want to think about 5,000 different application of that same category, but you want to discover them because your users are now doing business with other people that give them access to application that you cannot really control. So think about that scenario, and then think about the word cloud discovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, so what we are doing now is we're just trying to discover that bit. Now, this dashboard, what I have here is you would only see it if, because the whole idea is that users are going on your corporate computer and they're accessing multiple applications in the cloud. These applications are not sitting in your environment, so you can't really see them. Okay.
Okay.
So the best way to see it is to then look at how users are using this application using Defender for Cloud, which is a Microsoft Cloud security access broker. It's not a firewall, it's an access broker, and it's called a CASB. And it's called a CASB because it would sit on the computer to see what people are doing, see what application they're accessing, and then it helps you to categorize it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Understood. Thank you.
If you're lost, please feel free to come off mute and ask questions because you are better off understanding the fundamental, and then you can build on it. Okay, we've wasted so much time, but I'll try to cover. So we are trying to do a discovery. Now, the most important part is that this dashboard gives you that visibility. So in my environment, I probably have two devices in the test environment technically, and those two devices are obviously being brought into Microsoft Defender for endpoints, and from the endpoint, I've deployed Defender for Cloud App Storage. Now, in the dashboard, I can see about 74 applications that my users are using, my two devices and my two users are using. And what that means is that I can look at, for example, the application category, if that is of interest to me. So I can look at the category. I can look at whether it's a cloud application, whether it's a content management application, whether it's a collaborative application, whether it's an educative application. I can also see things around the risk level of the application. I can also see that my users have also been going to, or Microsoft themselves has also added some discovered application that they've seen. So over time, this becomes like it's a catalog. So over time, you can see stuff like all of the application that has been discovered by Microsoft that you can look for. And a good example, let's just do a good example. Let's look for Gmail. Maybe it might be there, maybe it might not be there. It's not there. It's in a category status, isn't it? So let's look for webmail, for example. Now, we can see Gmail is part of the webmail. So Microsoft has, over time, they refresh this, what's it called? The discovery apps, because they see that these are all cloud applications I see this somewhere and users are consuming them. So we can use this to discover the application. We can use this to then understand what the user consumption is like. And with that, we can then start creating policies to either restrict application or to block them based on what we've discovered. So I like to do some stuff. You can, basically you can use things around risk score. Risk score is a very good one. Risk score allows you to find the highly risky application within your environment, and then you can then try to start sanctioning them. I'm not going to go into the depth of this, but I want us to understand specific areas of this thing. Now, within this cloud discovery piece, we can tag our application. So say, for example, we have a requirements, and the requirement says that we need to find applications that are really, really bad. So maybe the risk score is terrible, like it's not a secure application. We want to find out the ones that our users are using, and then because the risk scores are from 0 to 10, and 10 is basically like the application is fine, and that's why we've got green, 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 green. So if I take it that, let's say our minimum baseline says about 3, you realize that, yeah, our users are quite good. They're not using bad applications, so we don't have to worry. Let's say we want to increase the baseline to about 4. We can now see that our users are probably using some bad application that is unsanctioned. We've probably seen one of our user code there before. We can click into it to understand why is it bad. So within that information, we can see the application info, and then we can see that they have some compliance code that they haven't really done well. So maybe within the application, it allows you to remember password. And the vulnerability there is that if the application become hacked or something, your password is stored within the browser, whatever. And perhaps you also support HTTP header. And then what means that there is also some element of security concern and flaws within the application. So that's why I got the score. So in a nutshell, if we cannot be discussing enterprise application without having to discuss some of this nice stuff. The other thing that I would also want us to quickly look at before we jump into registering an application and then looking at stuff is the OAuth application side of things. Not that one, sorry. I think it's going to be application governance, I think, because it's been moved. Now, within the application governance side of things first, there's something called the OAuth app, and from our little understanding of authentication authorization, we know that there are some applications that they are OAuth based, and there are applications that are OpenID Connect, and there are applications that are SAML based authentication. I want to give us a quick search. I want us to go on Google and search for what is, I'm going to put in the chat. So search for this difference in OAuth. I OpenID Connect and SAML. But you guys are not dumb. In simple terms. In simple terms. Now, if you search for that, let me just put that up for us. Good. And then I like to search for things. Now, let's see what we have here. So, let's look for something simple. So we can see what it says there. OAuth is better to secure information, and it makes sense to use. Sorry, SAML is better to secure information. It makes sense to use OAuth when users experiences priority. For example, for on mobile devices or quick login. And OpenID Connect is designed to use OAuth to provide SSO. Now, SAML is basically a much more older protocol. It supports both authentication and authorization. OAuth is basically more for authorization. So we need to understand this fundamental to be able to get the explanation I'm trying to explain here. Within the application governance, please search for that, read up on it so you can understand what I'm trying to explain in here. Within the application governance, we can see some information in here. We can see some 12 applications that are found. We can see 4 applications that are overprivileged. We can see 6 applications that are unused, and we can see 8 applications that are highly privileged application. If I click into this and I go to privilege or permission, or maybe privilege, and I do high and medium. Now, what this tells us is that I have some application in here that are consuming serious high permission. And what that means is that if there's a potential security concern through API, this application is able to do this, is able to read and write all my directory, is able to change my role management, is able to also affect my authentication method. It can change it, and is able to write my conditional access policies. Now, let's now paint a scenario. Let's imagine that a threat actor is able to break this application, this first application I've built internally. That means that they don't even need the user to they don't need to compromise this user. They only need to compromise the application, get the API, and be able to do whatever they need to do. And that is why it's important for us to look at the application governance and then come into the application catalog or within the discovery phase, and then possibly sanction such application. Let me know for the application, for example. So yeah, I'm not discovery, it's not going to be in here, I think. Let's go back in here. Not that one. Not that one. If I go into here, then probably search for break glass, for example. Yeah, this application is enabled. I can then either disable this application if I feel like it's overprivileged. I can also look at the users that are consuming it. I can see it's been consented. I'm going to get to this consent. I can say that it's got all of this permission. I can disable it. If I disable this application, it says that your users won't be able to log into this application again. Now, the whole idea of why I'm saying this is because if we come down to this Microsoft documentation, which is here, we can see that what am I saying? We can see this design here. Think about this. You have a land-based application, we have your SaaS application, Office 365. Everything goes through Entra. What drives that access to this application is the Microsoft Enterprise Application bit. Now, Entra is responsible for just authenticating and authorizing this application, and is giving that flexibility through SSO. Before I move on, do we understand that fundamental of what I'm trying to explain, or I've just been saying a lot of gibberish? Hello?
I can hear you.
Are you lost or you can hear me?
Not really.
We can hear you.
From my own
Sorry?
perspective, you have really done justice to it. But I would like you to like make a summary or recap on it before we jump to another aspect of it. Thank you.
Okay. We understand us having an application, right? We understand the importance of discovering this application because we need to understand why we have this application. We also understand categorization of this application, whether they are good or not, based on the risk score. There's also an important part, which is the looking at the app governance side of things, because the whole idea of app governance is to understand the API permissions that's been exposed. Because at the end of the day, API is not user authentication based, it's application program interface. It's behind the scene, and it's important to understand why we need to find out the level of permission those applications are having. And if it's an application that we own internally, we need to then think of the security around it. If it's an application that it's not owned by us, we have to then either disable it or remove the permission that are not being used. So in summary, what we just discussed here is, first and foremost, how do we discover the application? And the only way you can discover the application is to go into Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps and look at discovered apps. And then you can even use more filters and play with more filters to see application based on different things like risk score, security risk factor, all those kind of things. You can use that to discover how good or how bad the application is, and you can sanction it from a security perspective. Now, does that answer your question? Does that summarize that to you?
Basically, very, very correct. Thank you so much.
Good. Now that we've now spoken about the discovery part of this, let's now even cycle back down to what if we have a use case of in-house developer said we need a new attendance management system, and they said, okay, they're going to build the application for us. AGK is going to answer. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question quickly.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to quickly ask, right? When you were creating the snapshot for the cloud discovery report, what did you use for your source of logs?
Good question. So the source of log would reside within Microsoft Defender for Cloud House, because he would, so unless you're ingesting other logs from other log sources like your firewall or whatever, it's still going to be Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So basically what that means is that, and this question might be slightly what's it called? It might be slightly too technical for the class, but basically some business. So I've worked in an environment whereby they are ingesting information from their IPS, the firewall, and all those nice stuff into the Federal Cloud, so they can discover everything that is being used, that is going through their firewall. So the source of log can either be the firewall, it could be this, but within this environment, because I don't have any external source or whatever, it's just going to be Defender for Cloud Apps, and it's going to be basically what people are doing from their given machine and proxying down to the internet. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I searched for that specifically, but I didn't find it. What I saw was Microsoft. Let me share my screenshots in the chats.
Yeah, so basically you can upload your firewall traffic as well, and then you can create a snapshot of those reports and stuff like that. So it would require you to then either file through maybe syslog or file to an FTP or whatever, and then you can then create the snapshot of that particular report. But in this instance, because it's Microsoft native, is Microsoft, you can see collect logs from your firewall proxy. If you can, I'm sure you could probably use an API to actually file those logs, but you can also file down through whether it is a dedicated server that then gets that log and then ship it down into Defender for Cloud Apps. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I was just looking for exactly the source.
When you say sources, what you mean? I'm guessing that you mean additional logs, not the logs that sit within Microsoft.
No, the one, since we're working with Entra ID, right? So everything is within Microsoft, right? So I was just thinking of where to get those logs within the Microsoft environment.
Oh, okay. So at the end of, so Microsoft naturally has interconnected environment. I think I understand what you're trying to ask, and that's quite a very, very, very curious, intelligent question. So within Defender for Cloud Apps, within the Microsoft Defender, there are some key settings that has to be turned on to carry out that injection. So if you go down to Microsoft Defender and you go down into, I think there's a path for, yeah, there's a radio button here that would forward. This is it. So forward Microsoft Defender for endpoint signals to Defender Cloud Apps, giving administration deeper visibility into both sanctioned and unsanctioned application and shadow IT. It also gives them basically the ability to block unauthorized application when the custom network indicator setting is turned on. Forward data is stored and processed in the same location in your. So this is where the source of log is. If you are forwarding everything within Entra, but if you are bringing external information, then you have to go through maybe API or maybe go through So this one is basically this is more like Blue Coat is a web proxy, Barracuda is a firewall, and it might be yeah. So it depends on all of those other log sources. So that explains what I
Okay.
was trying to explain. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So these are
I
not
don't want
microsoft.
to. Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. I don't want to be dragged in classes
let's not.
because it's that complicated. I
You
just
can
sent
give
a
it a shot.
screenshot to the chat. You
Yeah.
can just look at it.
Anyways, so let's move forward. So I was painting a scenario about our infrastructure guys building a time gate application that we have to log in into every day and then clock our time. And they said, oh, by the way, we build this application. We want our users to be able to authenticate um with their, let's use a good scenario, with their username and password from the Naija Bootcamp. Okay. And then we want them to be able to use the same credentials, log in with their Entra ID credentials. And they now meet, say for example, let me see if I can call someone in the chat to help us. Maybe they now meet like just James Ago. James Ago, you're the security, you're the identity and access management engineer. We want you to help us stand up an application instance in Entra. Here is the credentials that we're going to give to you. We want you to, help us move forward. James, what do you think you would do first to be able to implement this? I mean, anyone that can just come off mute and then just help us understand this. It's not. It doesn't have to be. What would you recommend first? Yeah, HK, you can help if you want to.
Okay.
You can help.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, basically, it's depends on what you want to do. For the first, the app registration is the first thing you want to do, right?
Yep.
How I explained these things to myself was, because again, it's very confusing. So I don't blame anyone here. I'm still struggling, but I think I've gotten how to handle it. App registration is like the blueprint. Like I just do blueprint versus building analogy, right? App registration, it defines what the application is, what it needs, and where it lives globally, right? So who uses it pretty much are developers or someone setting up a brand new custom tool, right? Like this is what you mean by like in-house or inbuilt application. Like you're not getting it from outside. So what do you do here? You pretty much just get your client ID, your tenant ID, you create your secrets. This is where you direct your URIs, where the user goes after login, API permission. What are you giving access to? Like I want to be able to see the accounts, the users that are using MFA or not, to be able to see if they are complying with conditional access. I want to be able to read your emails, or I want to be able to pull your account details, your name, your email. So you have to give it that consent. So that's the first step with app registrations.
Cool. I think you've even said everything, to be fair, because you've gone and we are going there. So guys, I don't even think I need to be a teacher on this call anymore. I might just hand over the mic to you so I can carry on. Anyways, I was just joking. Thanks for that. That was just justice. So the scenario is that we want to register an application. The guys have said, oh, by the way, guys, we have this application. It's a timegate application. You need to log in with your credentials. Single sign has to happen. You'll be able to apply conditional access to it. We should be able to also grant it some permission because it needs to be able to read the calendar so that it can clock in the time, the date where you came in, and then you can send an email to your manager that, oh, by the way, David Adama was working on Tuesday, blah 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 blah. So the first thing you probably want to do, you want to register our application because they would the developers will give you some credentials. They'll give you some credentials and you give them some credentials technically. So using that simple scenario, let's just start. So the first thing is, as an Entra admin, because Entra is where the application is going to sit, and we already know that enterprise application are lightweight application that allows us to expose them over the internet so that users can log in with their username and password to focus on single sign-on and all those nice stuff. So we would go to entra.microsoft.com. We'll go to app registration. And in that registration, you can see a couple of tabs here, all application that you own, and application that you've deleted. I've not deleted anything. On the tab here, you can see new registration, endpoints. These are all endpoints. And endpoints are basically all Microsoft endpoints. Whether it is Auth, whether it's SAML-based, these are all of the endpoints that you need. So you can keep all of this endpoint on you. You don't have to know them often. Microsoft will automatically publish, or they would update this, and this authority URL is basically for is assigned to this tenant only. So I would explain in details. If whatever the developer needs, they would tell you. They will say, okay, please, can we get the logon URI or the sign-out URI or the OAuth endpoint or the SAML-based endpoint? They'll ask you some of those things, and this information is what you just share with them. But before then, this is all Microsoft endpoints that they can use to eat your tenants. Now, as a matter of fact, we want to create an application. So we call it time gates, or we call it time monitor. I call it time monitor. Okay. Time monitor. You have another question here. Supported account type. Who wants to tell us what option we should be picking in here? And why? Anybody that gives us the right answer will probably get some gifts. So based on what we explained to ourselves, we want to tell us what we're going to be getting in here. What was going to tell us what we're going to be picking in here? Supported account type. Anybody? Okay. The gift is monetary, and I would decide. We have 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
The question again.
The question is, I'm trying to pick a supported account type, because at the end of the day, I'm creating this application based on the requirement of the developers. They've said, oh, you want to help them stand it up, but you have to pick an option here, and you have to tell me the reason why you're creating the option. Don't forget, the application is internal. It's going to be on our tenant only, so we're not exposing it externally. And then it has to use a corporate email address and password for single sign-on. Somebody said C. You close but not. AGK, you've got your answer.
Okay. So you're going to pick accounts in this organization directory only. It's internal, so you're not sharing it with any other external tenant. Your organization only isn't a multinational with other added tenants, so there's no need to add that as a risk, right?
Yeah.
The third option is not it.
Yeah. That's just it. So the idea is that you don't forget the requirements. We're authenticating into a tenant only with a single tenant. We are not sharing external identity, and then we are managing it. So basically, it's this. So what we then have to do to continue is to register. Now, once we register the application, it's going to create the application for us. So we have the application. It's now called Time Monitor. Now, some information are very, very, very crucial. But before we start configuring this application, I know somebody has taken us on roles and role-based access control. Who can tell me what role you need to assign? So you got the answer, by the way, and I will give for you. This other person, you can't take this, you can't take 2 gifts, so it has to be someone for someone else. Now, the question is, now, before, what administrative role would you require to be able to register an application in Entra ID? Feel free to Google it, but you have 5 seconds. Oh, Jennifer, go answer. What roles do you need?
You need the app admin, application admin.
Good, thank you. So yeah, you're right. You need to be an app administration admin to be able to create an enterprise application. So you have an answer. You've answered, Jennifer. You can drop me your names. I think I've got AGK Mike. I think I just spoke to AGK before, so you can also drop your numbers. Just drop your message in the chat, and I'll respond to you. Now, good. So you have to be an enterprise application administrator to be able to create an application. Now, on this side of things, so we understand our roles and role-based access control is important because this application can do a lot of things, So you don't want to give everybody that role to be able to create an application. And that is why the concept of zero trust that we spoke about a couple of months is coming in. That is why you are trying to ensure that you are creating that just in time and just enough effort as access rather. Now, there are a couple of things you could do. There are a couple of things you can do within the enterprise application once you register it. First and foremost, you can create your branding, which means that you can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there are a
very,
couple of
very
things you
audible.
can do. You can put the name of the application. So let's, for example, the developer said that, okay, we want to give it a name, TimeGate. If you want to create a logo, you can upload the logo. You can put terms of service. You can do all those nice stuff. You can even publish the domain so that by the time you expose the application, all this nice stuff happens. But behind the scene, there are a couple of things that you could do as well. So let's say, for example, you are focused on creating particular kind of links that in terms of how people sign in and sign out of the application. Okay. Usually the the what's it called? Usually if you go down into usually the developers would have provided this information, because don't forget that the application would would um would have a URI, whether it is the sign-in URI or the sign or the login URI, whatever it is, and that also ensure that users are able to sign in to get the what we call the authentication token and then the token refresh and all those nice stuff. But what kind of allows that application to be able to that allows the application to be able to identify themselves, to authenticate as a service to environment, is what we call the secret and the certificate. Now, a secret or a certificate is it's more like think about it. Before an application can be able to contact your IDP, which identity provider, and say, oh, by the way, I'm looking for this person, try to authenticate into me, and I want to be able to grant them this. I need to have some secrets that I would have given to you. So think about the application as somebody that is coming to a house, and he knows that for example AJK lives in that house, for example. So he needs, but then he doesn't know anybody he needs to speak to. But because behind the scene, the developers of the house and the developers of the house have given AGK secret key or a certificate. So when you get to this entrance, just punch in this key and it's going to grant you access, and then you can do whatever you need to do, based on what the application needs to do. So this is where you then customize what we call the client secret and the client certificates. What this allows you to do is that it allows the application to be able to actually carry out multiple permission based on you can authenticate technically to verify that, okay, this application has the right permission to do what it needs to do, is able to do what it needs to do, uh is able to identify itself as an application, and then is able to also receive token, and then grant a token to the device when it tries to authenticate. Now, we recommend that you use what we call certificates, but for test environment, you can use a secret. So basically, all you need to do as an engineer is that you can then create your secret time monitor secret. Now, once you create the secret, Microsoft recommend you to use 180 days, which is 6 months. Once you add the secret, it's going to generate the secret for you. Once I close off this page, I won't see the secret anymore. So this is the secret you will share with the developers. And then within their code, they then have to then input the security, this secret so you can see client secret value cannot be viewed except for immediately after creation, but be sure to save the secret when it's created. So basically, once I close off this, once I refresh this, I go back, I see that the secret has disappeared. The purpose of this is that it's maxed out so that you put some element of security in it. But however, to be more secure, you are better off just uploading a certificate and then let the application developers put that certificate in their code, and then let them use that certificate to authenticate and identify the application to be able to access the credentials. Does that make sense, guys? So we've spoken about two things now. At the beginning, we spoke about discovering this application and what can be the component of the application, the permission, all those nice stuff. What we are discussing now is technically saying that what is the process of registering such application in an environment? Say, for instance, we are the owner of the application, because you need to bear in mind that not all application is owned by you, but your organization would need to use a lot of application that's owned externally. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps allows you to carry out that discovery policy kind of thing. And then app registration Entra allows you to register application that you own, and then you can then grant necessary permissions and secret to them. Does that make sense, guys? If I'm too fast, let me know. If I'm not making sense, let me know. If you are lost, let me know. So we can find you. Guys. Bridget, you've got your answer. Do you want to ask your question? Hello? You want to mute and ask a question? Have I lost? I can only hear myself. I can't hear anyone. If you're speaking, you want to? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. What's the question?
Good evening. I have the question is, first of all, these certificates. Is it like TLS? Like, is it TLS? Like, for example, like from Let's Encrypt? Can we get the certificates from Let's Encrypt? Something like that.
Yeah, it has
And
to be.
secondly,
So go on. Sorry.
is it going to be so after I get it from, okay, let me go over this again. So this application, we are creating it for the company in which developers have the code.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they do it, for example, now they push it to Git, for example. So this client's secret now, is it similar to the secret in Git, or can they use the one in Git, or must it be this client's secrets or something? I don't really understand this client secrets.
So let me explain to you. Let me explain to you. So
yeah,
whatever you choose, whether it is a certificate secret or federated as credentials, what Entra is concerned about is that within your code, your code has this secret embedded inside of it. And once your application is trying to ask for API permissions, for example. Entra would then check within it as, okay, does this application has this permission? Does it have the secret? Does it have the certificate? Oh, I have the certificate because I have a copy of it in Entra. I can verify. So it's not dependent on what the developer decides to use and how and what the certificate chain or certificate or what kind of certificate they consume within the environment. In test environments, you are most likely going to be using client secrets. While in a very heavy duty infrastructure, it's going to be the certificate that you've gotten from a certificate authority that is stored somewhere in your secret environment. And then you just have to upload a copy of that certificate in here so that by the time your application tries to identify itself within Entra, Entra will verify this application against that. Sorry, Entra will verify the certificate or the secret against the application. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But like this time monitor now, for example, it's a real time like application for this company internally. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So we just created we just registered the application just for us to create a scenario. Not like it's an application. It's like I'm not the developer. I'm just saying that let's say, for example, our developer says they have been an application. They would then tell us, oh, we are building an application. Can you help us expose this application through Entra so that our users can authenticate? All Entra is worried about here is that I want to be able to verify that this application is able to authenticate and identify itself within Entra. The only way he would be able to do it is by it either using the client secrets that I've given to him, or the application owner supplies Entra with a certificate to say, here's the certificate I have on my application. Whenever I try to access, because don't forget that the first scenario is that application is granted consent to be able to use Entra as an IIDP. That first scenario, which is consent to say this application can access this user, can access this directory, is where we check for certificate or secret. The other part of user authentication and whatnot is behind the scene once those consent has been granted. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes, it does. So let me just say what I understand from what you said. So first of all, the developers develop, they work on the code and give us an application. Then we are registering the application on Entra ID. So the users or the identities can access the application once it's registered on Entra ID internally for the company. Is that what you mean? Is that what this is?
Yes, technically. So think about this to say, Entra is just there to say this application would allow users to log in with their username and password that we manage in Entra, so that at the end of the day, I'm going to show you something now, so you understand what I mean by let's do this. You see, let's go to portal.office.com. Look at when I put in the URL, see that you see that it just automatically goes back to Microsoft without having to authenticate again. If I go into these apps, you can see there are all apps in here. And if I search for the whatever name, what I will call it, I call it one name, isn't it?
Is it time monitor or something? The one you created?
Let's have a look. It might not be ready. Okay. It might be ready. But let's have a look. It should be. Let's have a look. All apps. Maybe because I haven't granted all of those things, but I can expose it. Maybe from the setting. I'm gonna let's see if we can expose overview property. Maybe not. Yeah. I will expose and I'll show you what. So let's go down to enterprise. I think it should be ready now. Time monitor. So you have time monitor here. So ideally, if you go into property and then you say visible to users, for example, what this would do is that it's just going to allow users to be able to see the application. That is when the what's it called? everything has been done. Does that make sense? If you give it some time and then you come back here, you probably see all of the application here. But that's when everything has been done. You probably come back to check. But what I'm saying in this context is that the point that we are here at the moment is a point where we are working with the developer. So we register the application for them. The developer builds the application. We give them the client's ID and the secrets. Let's see, I think it should be here now. Time monitor. I'm not sure. Did I save it? Yeah. So we give them the client ID and the secrets. Then if required, the developer can tell us that, look, we need additional API permission. So by default, all application has user.read permission, which means that this application can sign in and read user profile. That's the basic one for using SSO. So let's now imagine that the application requires to also read specific information like calendar invitation, for example. Then we can get that through Microsoft Graph. And if you look at what it's saying, like or maybe your organization has specific kind of permissions that is required through API, you can do that, or you have your own APIs that you want to expose, which is fine. But basically, let's say for example, the application also needs to maybe read your mails, for example. We can then say, let's look for emails. Don't worry about this. The developers will give you what they're looking for. They will tell you, okay, we want this permission, we want that permission. Can you give us this permission? Can you give us that permission? So let's say what they're looking for is maybe calendar. Let's look at calendar. So maybe they need to read and write your calendar so that they can register your time. If you look at this, it says this allow this app to create, read, update, and delete events in your calendar in the organization. Users have permission to access. This includes delegates and shared calendars. So let's say, for example, the application is to do this. So the application would then, then once you're done, you can grant an admin consent. And then what that means is that as an administrator and as an application admin, you can grant consent on behalf of all of the organization so that by the time you publish this application to the users, they don't need to go through that user consent. We're going to discuss that shortly. So I'm just going to set yes here. And then the application is already consented. If you then need to expose API or whatever, you can do that. If you need to expose API, you can do that. There are times whereby the application developer will give you some what we call the redirect URI. And basically, that's where if you have like custom set of scopes and whatnot that you want to create for your application, you can then create your custom scope, you know, those nice stuff, which is fine. But for basic application that you're creating, all the things that the developer needs is just the client's ID and the client's secrets. So they need the client ID, they need the application, which is the client's secrets, and they need the tenant ID. So within this bit, they will then code all of this information into the application. And of course, they'll give you the redirect URI, they'll give you all this information. And then once they give all this information, you collect from them. So you need the redirect, you need the redirect URI, you need the I think you need to give them the right URI. You need because it depends on what kind of SSO you're performing. So there are two types of SSO. There is what we call identity initiated SSO, and there's what we call the service initiated SSO. If the SSO is directed back to your identity provider, that's the identity required SSO, which is if you're directed back to the service, that means that you are doing it on the service end. But the whole concept of this really is for you to be able to set up the application instance in your environment. Now, this part, some organizations have like documentation on what they expect you to give to them. But if you are not being given documentation, you can then, look at this quick information on how to go about it. But the basic thing that you need to put in mind is two things. you need to understand what the secret and the certificate, and you also need to understand the API permission and what you're exposing, and then what we call admin consent. Now, any question on that, guys? You've got your hands up, Kamora. Is that a question, or you just asked? Is that a question? Is it from the previous question, or is it from Kamara? You got your hands up. Hello. Is that a question, or can I continue? Is it Kamora? Is Kamora and Kamora Toluwalashe? You got a question, isn't it?
Oh, sorry. I was the one that asked earlier. Yeah, I understand. I was supposed to raise my hand. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that being said, now there are some fundamentals we need to also then understand, guys. That when you're when you have a new custom environment, so there are other things that we also need to look at. Now, there are specific, if you have a custom permission that is required, say for example, this application, say for example, you need a custom role to be assigned to users, that you don't just want to assign complete enterprise app application, complete application admin to a user. You can also do some granular roles whereby you can just allow them manage maybe API permissions or whatever. You can create your own custom rules, but I'm not going to go full detail into that. What I want us to look at now is we want us to look at how to then manage the property of an application. So let's now imagine that we're giving the developer the secret, we've granted the API, we've done all those nice stuff. Now we need to do some customization on the application, because by the time users try to log in, we need them to see what the application looks like. So let's go to our TimeGate application that we created, a time monitor application. Within the time monitor application, we can click on the application property, and then we can upload like a new diagram, a new picture for the application. We can also set the application to use requires as assignment, which means that not every, let's say the application is a critical application that is very, very sensitive. So we don't want everybody to be able to just see it to show up here, because the whole idea is that it's going to show up here for everybody. Once the application is deployed, it should show up here. It takes some time. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it should show up here. I don't know why it's not. It should show up here. Then it should show up here. And I guess it's going to show up here. Once you grant the consent, I guess it's going to show up. So if you want them to then customize things like the name of the application, what it would look like to end user, if you need users to have a note on the application, once they click on it, you can then do this. Now, there's also some governance around it. Imagine you have 10,000 applications, and then you don't know who owns what and why the application is there. So you have to then ensure that you create an application owner, because by the time you then have automation behind the scene that sends, because don't forget that this certificate or secret will expire. And once it expires, it's going to break authentication. So you need to ensure that somebody is responsible for that piece of work. They own the application. So let's imagine that Oluwalashe is the application owner, or she's the product owner, and she's the one that sponsored this application that developers has built. It is in her duty for her to manage the entire secret or certificate lifespan of the application, provided it's still within the tenancy. So we are going to assign the application to Toluwalashe. But unfortunately, I don't have any Toluwalashe in my tenant. I obviously have another. I probably have Tola or whatever I have, or Pi or whatever. Let's have a look. Or wherever I have T. I have Tunde, or let's just say test guy. So test guy is Toluwalashe. Toluwase owns this application, and it's just a simple way for you to be able to manage this application so that if anything is to happen, she can come in and say, oh, by the way, I'm no longer the sponsor. I want to delete this application. Any question on that, guys? Any question on that, guys?
Yes, I have a question, please.
Okay, sure.
Yes, regarding the what is it called again?
Enterprise
The
application.
application secret, just as you mentioned the other time.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you said it's time bound, you know. So
Mhm.
also, what are we expected to do when the time expires? Is it like renew the time or to recreate another key for that same particular application?
It shows that you've been following. Thank you for that. Yes,
Right.
yes. Once it's expired, you would see. Let's. I think I might have I might have one that's already expired or something. Let's have a look. You would see at the bottom of it expired. So you can have automation behind the scene. I built an automation that I think I built an automation. I built an automation that does send me an email to inform me that the application is about to expire. Let me see if I can still find the automation somewhere. I think that is driven by PowerShell or so, Power Automate. I can't remember what using building the automation, but I can then, if you are very hands-on, you can write some custom scripts that goes in that pull this information behind Microsoft Expose APIs and then let you know. You can see this one is expired. Let me see if I have some test one that I've already built. Oh. There's a whole lot in this conversation that you you would have to do a lot of tests. But yes, back to your question. Once the application is expired, you would have to build a new one. So this, I think, is one of the ones I've built initially and it's expired. So you have to then see certificate expired, create a new one. Once you create a new one, you just have to create a new one, call it version 2. So you have to ensure that it doesn't expire before you
The,
send it back
the
to the
creation of
developer because
new one.
yeah, because it's going to break the authentication. So it's very important that you have to then, and that is why you have to have automation behind the scene that looks for expired secrets. Microsoft has not really done well in this part because they don't get notification. You only get notification for SAML-based authentication, but enterprise app registered application, you don't get notified. So you have to then start checking. So I think I have let's
But
say expired. Sorry.
so far, how many hours or so is the default time at the moment?
You can set it to most people. If you are lazy, you can set it to 1 year, and then have I have like a diary that manages it. Or
Okay.
if you are not lazy, you can set it to 6 months. Ideally, 6 months is recommended because if the application gets compromised, because don't forget that you need to add code the secret into the application, and if threat actors are able to break into the application, then they can find the secret, and that automatically they can then use the API permissions to be able to carry out malicious activity on behalf of the application, not just
Okay,
the user. So yeah,
okay. Sorry to have cut you short. That means this is manually checked, a kind of, there's nothing like
yeah,
automation. There's no
you cannot,
alerting or something like
but
that.
you can automate it, but it's not straightforward. I think I automated one. I can't find the script, but you can automate it behind the scene, and that would then allow you to get like a weekly report on expiring secret, and you can run it as a task in your Windows computer, or run as a task in Azure. Or if you have another automation system that you use, all you just need to do is just to plug into the Microsoft API, and it's going to pull down all of the expiring secret for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so that being said, any question before we push further to? I think we have about 20 more minutes, so we can cover a whole lot of things that we haven't covered.
Sorry.
Any question? Yeah, yes, please go for it.
Okay, in that certificate and secret, when I clicked it, so you have a certificate, you have clearance secret, and you have federated credential. You see, can you choose any one, or in this part, this type of app we're creating is only clearance security we can choose?
Good question. You can choose anyone based on your developer's preference. Okay? You can choose anyone based on your developer's preference. So it doesn't have to be anyone that you choose or something. And based on the developer's preference. But from a security perspective, certificates are usually advisable. Secrets can be, because don't forget that your certificate is that whether it is a self-signed certificate that sits with you actually bought it from the register rather, is more secure than a secret. Secret are just long secret like this, and then it has to be hard coded into the then if application becomes vulnerable, threat actors can see. So it depends on your developer's preference. Any more question?
Again, when I clicked it, description before then expires. So in that, you say entered a description for this clearance secret. So what can that be?
It can be anything. It is whatever you think it is. It can be anything. There's no. It's a description that it makes sense to you. That's why I put this. So and this that goes back to your organization naming convention or policies or process. Descriptions is based on your own discretion. Any other question? Okay. So now, in the midst of all of this shenanigans, in the midst of all of this thing that we have spoken about, there is an important thing that we need to do as an Entra admin. Now, application is not technically your focus. It's like you're supporting the guys, but you have to ensure that the environment is good enough to support it in a secure manner. And that is why there are some key peculiar things that you have to turn on from a security perspective. The very first one is the consent and permission. The permission I showed you in here before at the beginning, when I said that some applications are overprivileged, and it's important that you have the right set of permission in place to then govern it properly. Now, think about this part as your initial screening. Saying that, now, the application that we have here, we know there are some users that are very funny. They just go on the internet. How can I find an automation that would allow me, a good example is ChatGTP, or maybe an application that allows you to log in with your organization credentials. They've exposed the application, and someone says, okay, I like this application. It's good. It allows me to do my work fast. In fact, I don't even need to be on my computer. It does the work for me. So I want this application. He logs into the application. It then enables, because there's some application that supports single sign-on. A good example would be, let's say GitHub. A good example would be GitHub. Now you can see GitHub is saying that let's see if we can create an account, and it's saying no, maybe not. Let's say let me not GitHub. Let me look for owned by Microsoft. Not that one. Let's look for what's this application called? It's called is it something cloud? What's it called? Try to look for an application. Let's look for an application called Island Access Cloud. Yeah, this application, for example, let's say you have an organization that you are the social, you are like the training manager. So you click on this application, and you can see it's telling you that you should log in with Microsoft, log in with Google, or log in with whatever, and then you put, let's say for example, put in my business email in here. Let's put in Soares. Yep, let's use this one, and then I click on next. Then it's asking me that I could not have that one. So maybe I'm trying to find out an application that would support single sign-on. Can't find any, to be fair, but what I'm trying to find is what's that cloud platform that does share that you can share with something share I can't, it's something share code or whatever it's called.
SharePoint.
No, not SharePoint. You can share it. Share something. It's like Google Drive. It's like Google Drive. What's it called again?
Is it Dropbox?
Yeah, Dropbox. Yeah. Thank you, Dropbox. Dropbox. So let's imagine, say, for example, Dropbox. And we go to Dropbox, and then we try to log into Dropbox, and then maybe the person has an account with Dropbox, and for instance, they try to use SSO. Now, because Dropbox is an enterprise application that already exists in Microsoft, users will be able to set up if they have an account, and then you can see you can set up as you can use single sign on, all of this nice stuff. Now, because it is a platform that's already within Microsoft, maybe that might not be best use case, but you want to stop users from consenting to an application. The reason for that is that users don't really know what are the security implications of those applications, because they don't have visibility to this information in here, which is stuff around the privileged access of the application, whether it is highly privileged, whether it's low privilege. They will just consent to it, and then once they consent to it, that application then has that ability to do all of this permission that is requesting for, which sometimes it doesn't even use. So because of that, you as an admin, you want to turn this on so that you don't allow users. The other thing you also want to do is, even with the admin consent, you want to only grant this to some selected users within your organization so that they receive the consent email and they can then approve. And then you also then want to set expression for consent, because at the end of the day, what's the purpose of having an application pending approval that you not accept? So these are the basic fundamentals that you can set with an Entra. The other thing you can also do is to create what we call classification of permission. So you can classify application based on the permission that they are asking for. So if you see the application is asking for maybe highly privileged permission like directory.read or whatever, which you know that it can really affect the organization, directory.read and write, you can add that into, what's saying, fail to update consent, only add permission that does not require admin consent. You say, so those are highly privileged ones. So you need to then, you can also classify the consent based on what you think is highly privileged that can cause problems to your organization, and then use that to classify applications. So at the end of the day, once those applications are reported back to Defender for Cloud Apps, you can see information about them, how it's being classified, who consented to those application, and all those nice stuff. And then that allows you to then carry out necessary security requirements. Don't forget that there are two elements of security in it. The first one is the application itself. You have to ensure that the application does not have so much permission that should, in case it gets to the wrong hands, it can do things behind the scene because you're giving the application API permission. The other part is now the authentication part, where users are putting their username and password and then going through your own regular security, because you want to ensure that users that are also accessing this application are also coming from a secure environment. They are not compromised, so that threat actors cannot log in into the application and start stealing your data. So two things here. Any question, folks? We've got 7 more minutes. We haven't. There's one more thing I would like to touch for us before we can finish. If you are happy to spare 15 more minutes, you can give a thumbs up, or 10 more minutes rather. You can give a thumbs up. Or if you feel like we should finish bank on time by 5 Nigerian, by 6 Nigerian time, we can sign up.
Okay. You asked we have a question. Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Please, I want to appreciate you because you have really done justice to this particular topic. And I would still like to ask whether we can lay hand on any resource that will maybe throw maybe some light more in addition to what you have done on this topic. Maybe a resource through which we can learn more and maybe possibly have hands-on. That will really help. Thank you.
Brother, to be honest with you, there is nothing you are looking for that is not on the internet. YouTube is a very, very good resource. I don't know how, maybe because I don't live in, I don't know what the amount of resource that you're exposed to in Nigeria, but YouTube is a very, very good resource. So maybe it might even explain more than I explain. It might even give you more use case and stuff, but YouTube is a very, very good resource. I promise that I will share my bookmark at some point. Maybe this and that thing. I would also share my bookmark at some point, but to also help you. But in terms of I can say some of those things really. So YouTube is very, very good. If you go on YouTube, you can find a Microsoft Enterprise application for. So I like to look for things like a dummy. So I can say Microsoft Enterprise application for dummy or wherever. Do you get what I mean? So that it kind of gives me resources. So YouTube is good. You can also, Microsoft documentation also does a lot of explanation. You can find out different information about it. You can configure it, and they got like step-by-step bits and bug that we can work on and stuff. So yeah, it's good. So I would say the link that the moderator shares during the call, the link that the moderator shares before the call is also always very useful as well. So I think my YouTube is here. So let's look for enterprise. Entra gives, so you have a lot of on this have good materials that you can. I think I like to put full course on my full tutorial. So it's going to give you like this guy explains everything. Application, the enterprise server service principle, explain it well. He's a good guy. This guy also explains it well, fundamentals of the authentication method and why we're using that. So we can leverage upon all these guys and they kind of explain deep dive what it is, how to configure it, and all this nice stuff, easy peasy. So if you're happy for us to, because we are bang on we are 3 minutes before, if you want to give 10 more minutes, give a thumbs up. If you don't, we can, call it a day. Okay, good. We've got some numbers. All right, thanks. So now we have a basic understanding of what an application that we register by ourselves and that we own, and also applications that also use what we call the Auth authorized. I mean, so if I mean, I asked us to Google from the beginning differences between SAML-based authentication, OpenID Connect, and OAuth 2.0, which is open authorized, which is OAuth, which is OAuth 2.0. Now, these are all authentication protocols. Now, for SAML-based, SAML is basically SAML would do what we call both authentication and authorization. Now, with SAML, I call it SAML-based authentication. The full meaning is Security Assertion Markup Language, and it is basically logging standards that helps with application access in the context of single sign-on. Now, the advantage of this is that it's going to authenticate and it's going to authorize. Microsoft supports it. A lot of identity providers supports it. When we were predominantly on premises, we support it. And now, even Microsoft authentication to other Microsoft servers, like if you look at the screen, look at this bar, you see something. If I open, you see something. You see that it's going to redirect. Sorry, just let's open something else. Let's go to Excel. Look at it. You see, come on. That's what I just want to do. Let me pick one more or something here. You would see there will be a redirect. It's so quick. But at the back of it, you see something that says SAML / then the domain you're trying to hit. Now, the SAML-based authentication is one protocol that Microsoft supports. What we've discussed is the application on behalf of the user. So depending on the application and how the application is built, we have to define the protocol. And this is what the owners of the application would let you know. So I think we've done some stuff like, we have, some of us have Instagram accounts where we already have Instagram account, and automatically we can connect to our YouTube, we can connect to Facebook, we can connect using the same credentials. What drives that bit is the OAuth authentication, which is part of what we are discussing here, because behind the scene. Now, it's not dependent on so many factors how the application is built. You really find OAuth 2.0 application for single page applications like applications like this. Like, for example, applications like that can use federation, that can authenticate on. So say, for example, I'm on YouTube, my account is set up on YouTube. If I need to go on Gmail, for example, I don't need to put my Gmail, multiple Gmail. I'm delving away slightly from the product. I'm talking about the protocols now, for example, that works behind the scene for the product. So I'm on Gmail. I am able to also log into my Gmail without having to put my credentials. What is working behind the scenes is that OAuth standard, and OAuth stands for it's an industry standard for OAuth 2.0. It's just basically open authorization. So don't forget that in identity access management, we speak about authentication and authorization. With Samuel does both. It does authentication and authorization together, and that is the first login screen that you will get. Auth does only authorization. So most times you don't get the login screen anymore. It just redirects you to that application. And that is why we're having all of these things. So if I'm just going from all of these Microsoft apps, I'm not logging anymore. I'm just being redirected. So what's happening behind the scene is it's an OAuth token just being granted to that OAuth token granted to the device. Device you just authenticate on my behalf and it's just going. But if I need to put in my credentials, username and password, I'm going through SAML based. So depending on the application and how it's built. But why am I saying all of these things? The reason I'm saying all of these things is because we might have scenarios whereby we have an application that's been brought into our organization that also needs to use single sign-on, because the purpose of our conversation today is single sign-on. Now, based off that, we might have requirements where now in this case, it's not the developers that are asking. Maybe it is who can I get? Maybe it is Jennifer that's asking today that Jennifer is the CFO, and Jennifer says, I like this application, and I was speaking to them. Can we get AGK, who is the infrastructure lead, to help us set up single sign-up for it? AGK assess the application. He said, this application is actually it's an OAuth application. So basically, it's an application that sits in a different environment. So we have to bring it in. What we need to do, we then have to then draft how we build the application. So what we then have to do is to go to enterprise application, click on new application, and then we can, if the application already exists in the Microsoft gallery, we can search for the application. If it's not existing within the Microsoft gallery, so let's, for example, let's say we are looking for, if it's GitHub, for example, that we're looking at, you can see there's a lot of Git and all the things that you need is already in there. So maybe let's look for what we call Dropbox. Dropbox is a good one. Dropbox. That was from my internet today. Jennifer, if you got hands up, is that for a question or is that for a question or is that for you have a complaint?
Oh yeah, sorry. I noticed something, but I just want to say it. I don't think it's part of this cloud that we're talking about. Okay, so when I do read, I do like go back to the classes, like the chats on Teams. But sometimes I don't know if it's only me. I don't see after the class ends, I don't see the chats anymore. Like I don't see the group anymore, the channel anymore. I don't know why it happens, because I know that sometimes in the chats there are some informations or there are some links or there are some files that we do drop in classes, but it's only when we are in class that's when I can see our chats. So I want to know why that is happening, or maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but that's the way, because it's a public Teams link, so it's not going to be holding all the information. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that's just by default or by design, because it's a public link and you're no longer part of the organization, so you lose access to it, unfortunately.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I mean,
sorry, I think because I used to see the previous.
I think what, sorry?
I used to see the
I mean, maybe you can check with maybe we can check with the admin or something, or they can help with that. But anyways, you can see. So a good example would be, so we can address that later, but let's just try to finish up. We can come back to that. Now, a good example would be, we can check within the enterprise application and we can then find if there's an existing instance for the application. So if we look into this, for example, into Box, for example, there's a name for it. It was created by Box. They publish it to Microsoft. So Microsoft has like a dedicated service where if you're an application developer, you can ship them your application. They'll ask you to carry out some assessment. If they're happy about it, they'll take the application on board. And then they'll give you have to then provide them information around how the application has been provisioned. So things like what is the single sign-on mode, is using SAML-based authentication. So in that case, it's SAML that is using. If it's an OpenID Connect application, it's going to tell you what it's using. The URL is .brox.com. The provisioning is also automatic provisioning supported, so you can use what we call scheme and all of those nice stuff. There are also information about the security factor that they have to provide. So all this information that you are seeing here is what Defender for Cloud Apps would scan to make judgment of this of the risk score. And if we take like 5 steps backwards, what we discussed in the beginning, imagine that users are being given access to consent application that they don't know. You'll find out that there will be loads of application in your environment that can have security implication that can really cost you a lot because of the fact that those applications were just brought in without proper governance in place. And that is why we are discussing all of this nice stuff that we are talking about. Now, so you can look at the compliance status of the application. If it's an application that's already provided by Microsoft, and so on and so forth. And then you can just click to create. Once you create that, this will automatically create the application instance in your environment. And then what you then have to do from an admin perspective is that you want to set up the single sign-on. So apart from what we've seen before around the property, the name of the application ID, the URL, the application ID, everything still remains the same. You can assign owners to the application. You can assign roles to the application itself to be able to do specific things, You can assign users to the application like you already assigned before. Then single sign-on is not the issue. Now, because it is SAML-based, we are not going to be using client secrets or client ID here. Rather, we are going to be using SAML-based authentication setup. In this part, we'll be talking about, so in this part, the application owner. You see, previously we spoke about sign-on URL, we spoke about what's it called? We spoke about entity ID and all those nice stuff. All this information will be provided by the application owner. So they'll give you this information. They'll give you this information as well. And then, and you find this information in their website. I think if I can quickly go back to the website, how did we get here? So let's go down to Dropbox. If you click into it, they have the step-by-step integration on their website. So you can go and play with this, to be fair. And then you go through everything step by step. It will give you the sign-in URL. You have to have like a tenant in Dropbox, and then you have to put the redirect URL as well. So they'll give all of this nice information. Comment box. So they give all this information as well. I think we already created that, isn't it? Let's go to application. Let's create that now. Let's just continue. I don't think I saved it, did I? Probably have two of it, but it's fine. So they give you all this information as well. So what you then have to do is to follow through the step-by-step. So this step-by-step that you have here is the same is similar to the same step-by-step your developers have given to you. But what then differentiates this step is the authentication method. So whether your developer are using SAML or whatever, they would document what they need from you, and you would give them what they need, and they'll give you what you need to be able to use the application in your Entra environment. So the single sign-on bit, you would have to configure all of this nice stuff. There's also Microsoft then also gives you a certificate. Yeah. That certificate is what, once you provide all this information, is what you then upload into the application that is external. And then once the application tries to authenticate and verify who you are and all of this nice stuff. It's going to use that certificate to actually release those tokens. You could also do what we call the attributes and claims. If the application requires specific set of attributes or claims that allows it to, map, like entity mapping, for some of us that understands or have done things around them, database management. So you have to map the entity again. Say, for example, on the database, uh, you have like headers, and on the headers, on the column, you have the header on the column, and within the header, you want to map what it is within the entity. So you have to map this entity and claims with what you have on Entra against the application, so that you can have like attribute mismatch or claims mismatch. Other things that you could also look at is still within the permission as well. If the application requires highly sensitive permission, you can also take away the permission, because these are all API or application delegated permissions that gives the application ability to do stuff on the users behind the scene and stuff like that. Then you can revoke those permissions based on whatever you need. If you need token protection, so as we all know, SAML allows us to actually enable the use of encrypted SAML assertion within the application, so that at the end of the day, the token that has been issued down to the device cannot be intercepted. So for example, you want to protect your token. This is actually very useful in a highly, highly, um, highly secure, highly privileged application that you're working with. There's some applications that are very highly secure, and you want to ensure that everything that is done within this application to the device level is fully secured end to end. So you want to encrypt the token, so that even if there's like a token theft, or there's like a man in the middle attack and all of this nice stuff, you can intercept it. Now, just before I give it a call for a day, you can also look at things like signing logs. Don't forget that the whole idea of this enterprise app conversation, blah blah blah, is that our user are able to authenticate and get access to the application using their Entra ID credentials. What you are doing behind the scene, and I want you to take you home, is that you are just ensuring that depending on the application type, depending on the authentication method, depending on the security consideration, you are providing an environment that enables the application to be able to be useful for your users. And then you, from a security perspective, you can monitor the life and you can also monitor like what we. Last but not the least, we are not just building this application and we are building it just building it. Within the application, the security component of bringing in conditional access also play a key role, because if the application is highly sensitive and you don't want people to manage use on an unmanaged device, or the application is security required, then you can then implement your conditional access policy based on the application. For example, you want to require MFA for the application. You want to ensure that when users are accessing the application, they are going through what we call maybe your GSA, or your application requires token, it requires continuous access evaluation, or requires things that require sophisticated security measures. So in all of this, implementing the SSO is one. Tying that implementation to users' user experience, to security requirements, to different processes is what you then have to think of. So just to round it up, with all that I've explained, do we understand the scope of implementing SSO on the high level? Why we're implementing it? What are the considerations and all this nice stuff? Do you understand there? Have I lost people? I feel like everyone is sleeping.
We're here.
The one speaking to me.
We're here, sir.
Have I
We're here, sir.
have I lost
We're
you?
here.
Are you lost?
No.
Does it
No,
make sense why we have? But do we understand the fundamentals of enterprise apps and why we use them and what are the configuration options and all this nice stuff? Okay.
Yes.
On top of that, I want to believe that I'll be able to pass, even if you don't understand everything, you understand one or two things, and I believe that I'll be able to pass some things that I know within this area to yourself. And if you have any question, feel free to give me a shout. Whenever I've got time, I would answer. On that note, are you happy for us to call it a day and then cover that we've covered this area of work?
Yes. I move the motion for adjournment or for closing
All right.
At this moment.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure taking you on this journey. Hopefully, if if there is any other topic that I can take, I'll let the team. I'll give the team a shout. But on this note, I'm just gonna call it a day. Have a nice Sunday and a good week ahead. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.
God bless you. God bless you, sir. So much.